Keto was the most searched diet in 2020 with over 26 million Google searches, while intermittent fasting was second with over 11 million searches. But as we head into the last quarter of 2021, I can safely say that we are now seeing a number of serious faults with the ketogenic fasting world. More and more people are running into hormonal issues, weight gain, and a ton of weight loss resistance from the keto fasting diet. So, what is happening? Why are we seeing so many problems arise with this supposed magical weight loss diet? If you're part of one of the thousands of fasting keto Facebook groups, you can see the countless people asking, "Hey, what is happening? I was losing weight, but now it stopped." The advice handed out by the thousands is keep calm and keto on. Eat more fat, drop the carbs more, fast longer, do a water fast, cut the protein, or go to nothing but protein. But could this all too common advice be wrong? Could it be making matters worse? Well, today my guest is going to give us the answers to these questions and is going to share with us the Big Fat Keto Lies. My guest today is Marty Kendall, the author of Big Fat Keto Lies. Marty is an engineer who seeks to optimize nutrition using a data-driven approach. His interest in nutrition began 18 years ago in an effort to help his wife, Monica, gain better control of her type 1 diabetes. But since then, he has worked to develop a systemized approach to nutrition tailored for a wide range of goals. Marty has been sharing his learnings at optimizingnutrition.com and has developed Nutrient Optimizer and data-driven fasting to guide people on their journey to nutritional optimization. So welcome, Marty.
Hey, great to chat, Karen. What a great intro. I can't wait for this podcast that you intro.
I hope I got everybody like on the edge of their seats with that.
Oh, yeah. I'm thrilled. I can't wait.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours. You and I connected a few months ago, and it's been awesome since then. I was in your program, and it was fantastic. And I just couldn't wait to share this with my followers. So I'm excited for this conversation and for everybody to hear it.
Thank you so much. Been loving your content too. And really rational, balanced approach that you've developed through going through the different diet fads and learning what works and what doesn't as well, a lot like me.
Yes, we see very eye to eye on many things here. So you were, like, as your book talks about, you were so deep into the keto worlds. I mean, you were, partnering up with the Jimmy Moores of the world. And it was like, you were full on, let's do this ketogenic diet.
I was definitely into the biohacker, early adopter keto, and had the ketone monitors and trying to get my ketones higher and all that sort of stuff. Just trying to search for something that worked for me and my wife, and trying to understand how it all worked. So definitely been on the ride for the last 5 or 6 years or so.
I was going to ask, when did that start? Like, when did you discover the keto diet? Because you said it was so funny because it was the Keto Clarity by Jimmy Moore book that got me into it, and it was the same for you. So what year was that? Roughly like 2015?
Yeah, I'd pre-ordered Jimmy's book, and I was following Steve Finney and the like, and I listened to literally thousands of Jimmy Moore podcasts and everybody else, and Dave Asprey and the Bulletproof Coffee and all that sort of stuff. So went fully down the rabbit hole and bought the whole thing hook, line and sinker, like a lot of people did, and that was really exciting and taking off. And you can see the Google search results over the last 10 years for keto have sort of rocketed up, and then sort of tanking over the last couple of years, which is interesting. So.
Yes. And so tell us what happened to both you and your wife when you hit the keto hard. Did it work at first? What happened?
Yeah, we definitely went all in on the high fat approach. And low carb in and of itself is really a godsend in terms of type 1 diabetes management, and dialing back carbohydrates and eating, minimizing processed carbs is just a a genius hit for type 1 management and stabilizing blood sugars, and not always be chasing high blood sugars with more insulin and trying to eat yourself out of a low is really, really important. But just adding more fat, it just leads to energy toxicity. Fat is low satiety, low nutrient density, and you get to the point where you actually increase energy toxicity in your body. You get fatter and your body needs more and more insulin. And you see a lot of type 1s who are chasing the high ketones with low protein and high fat, increasing their basal insulin through the roof instead of doubling their daily insulin dose. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword that you just have to find that middle balance, which doesn't happen in crazes and fads that go off on social media these days. It's all or nothing, and let's run to the extreme because everything at the other extreme was bad, and
Yes.
we are the true believers now and everybody else is wrong, and we've got to go harder and faster and longer, and that low carb is good and therefore zero carb is better, and low fat is bad, so let's fat as a free food because it doesn't trigger insulin and we can have as much as we want. And yeah, those things didn't serve us well. And I think a lot of people, you can see from people jumping off the keto trend like rats on a sinking ship, really.
Yeah.
It's not working for a lot of people over the long term, and people looking for a new way. And now there's a high protein to energy ratio, and you can see people jumping to the super high extreme protein percentage, which moving in that direction is definitely an important thing, but to go extreme again is unsustainable and difficult. So yeah, I've just tried to say, let's find the optimum for you, and quantify a way to find that, and tailor your diet for different approaches and different needs.
And it's funny because you say, more fat doesn't create satiety, which we're told the exact opposite in the keto
I
world.
believed just eat fat to satiety for a
Yes.
very long time. I heard it preached over and over again. I thought, well, okay, I'll just down the butter and the peanut butter, and it's really yummy, and the exogenous ketones and the MCT oil in my coffee, and I thought this can't really be right. So when you dial in the nutrient density aspect of it quantitatively, you realize that refined fat has got almost zero nutrient density. So you just need to find the balance between those extremes.
What do you mean when you say energy toxicity from it?
Yeah, everybody talks about insulin toxicity lately these days. It's been a big craze in keto sphere about, insulin bad. Insulin toxicity is the fundamental driver of all our metabolic diseases. But really the upstream problem of insulin toxicity, the reason why we're all gaining more insulin or needing more insulin is just we've got so much energy stored in our body. And we often see insulin as a response to the food we eat. But when I update my wife's basal insulin every 3 days, every 3 or 4 days, and tweaking the numbers to try and fine tune it. And 80% of her insulin required each day is just the basal insulin, which she needs with or without eating, just to hold the energy in on her body. So the low carbosphere, the keto world, has seen insulin as something that is an anabolic hormone that drives energy into storage. But what insulin predominantly is, it's just the hormone that stops your body disintegrating. If you didn't have any insulin, my wife would, all her fat and protein and glucose stored in a body would leach into a bloodstream as elevated ketones, free fatty acids, and high glucose. Your body's basically just disintegrating into your bloodstream, and you end up peeing out ketones and blood sugar and everything, just trying to shed that excess energy in your body. So I sort of had this light bulb moment where I realized that, the way to decrease insulin fundamentally is to find a way of eating that enables you to not be overweight, to not have to hold so much energy on your body, and then you can decrease your overall insulin levels. Your basal insulin is the majority of the the insulin you need across the day, and also you become more insulin sensitive, so you don't need as much insulin after meals. So yeah, just quantifying and living with the numbers all the time as a just give you some fascinating insights into how it actually works. And I need it to work for my wife. And yeah, it's been great to have those insights to help her dial that in.
And so you guys were, you're drinking the bulletproof coffees, you're down in the MCT, the ketones, everything.
Yeah.
And you guys gained weight. Like your
Yeah,
picture in your book, I thought you were like one of these naturally always been skinny guys. And then I'm like, oh, he was a little chunky. Look at him.
Yeah. I was definitely tubby as I just kept on down in the butter and trying to chase the high ketones. And I went, this isn't working, and there has to be another way. And yeah, I listened to Jason Fung a lot as well.
Yes,
and
same.
One really useful insight he had was about the food insulin index. And I dug into that and looked to quantify that, to look at which foods had the lowest insulin response after we eat. So they measured, the University of Sydney measured the amount of insulin response in the 3 hours after we eat. And I used that data to sort of quantify and apply it, develop a formula to all the foods. So then all of a sudden I realized that the lowest insulin response foods are the ones that, are high fat, low protein, minimal nutrient density, and minimal satiety. So I thought there must be other things. We need, foods that provide nutrients, protein, and greater satiety per calorie. So just need to find a balance between stable blood sugars, healthy blood sugars, and satiety, which manages the amount of stored energy we have in our body, which then decreases the overall basal insulin required across the day.
Okay. So let's get into then some of your big fat keto lies.
Where do you want to start?
You guys, like me, are the same thing. I went keto. I didn't get fat, but I certainly didn't do well on it. I felt like crap. I was doing a lot of data stuff myself, and I was testing my hormones before and after. And, I was watching my thyroid because I had a thyroid problem, and I watched my reverse T3 go up and my T3 go down. So my metabolism within like 6 weeks of keto, it was harming my thyroid negatively. Wow. And the keto world would say differently. They would say, no, it just means that you're using your thyroid hormone more efficiently. And so it doesn't need to be as high. And that's wrong, because when your reverse T3 goes up, your thyroid hormone is going into storage. And when you look at the research, every PubMed paper on it shows that you reduce your carbohydrates extensively and you fast, that it will tank your T3. It's just a natural metabolic response to a low carb fasting diet. So anyways, that's my experience with it. But so yours, like you just nailed it on all of your big fat keto lies. Like, okay. Cause I know that everybody's going to be like, but, but keto, first off, more ketones are better. Like you hear that all the time, that people are like obsessed with their ketone readings, like taking their ketone readings constantly and going, why am I not getting past 2 or 3 or whatever it is? Right.
Yeah. It's crazy. Just this, Finney came out with this optimal ketone zone chart, based on a weight loss study and some cyclists who are both populations were in the early stages of fat adaptation and moving from a high carb to a low carb diet, and developed this optimal ketone zone that's sort of between 1.5 and 3 millimolar was this ideal range and this mythical range that we should all aim for. But what it turns out is that, in that early phase, you're not using the ketones well. Your body doesn't know how to deal with the fats. There's sort of this, you've got carbs and fat sitting in your body, and your body doesn't deal with it well. But once you actually drop the carbohydrate over time, your body learns to oxidize the fat and the ketones really well. So you don't see this high levels of energy floating around in your bloodstream, and you don't want high levels of blood glucose, free fatty acids, and ketones all in the milieu in your bloodstream all the time. You want that to be lower, so then once your energy in your blood drops, you can then use the energy in your body fat. So yeah, over time you just saw more people like Louis Villaseñor, who's hardcore keto with adequate protein and extremely fit and healthy. He's got ketones of 0.2, 0.3, and then I'm getting healthier and seeing the same sort of blood ketone levels, and sort of realized that the longer you do a keto diet, the more you adapt to it, and your ketones actually tend to decrease as you lose weight and have got less energy stored in your body. You've got less energy stored in your blood, and the ketones aren't as high. And I think the big problem is that people don't differentiate whether those ketones are coming from your stored body fat being released, or just the extra MCT oil and exogenous ketones and butter that you're jamming into your system trying to chase these high ketone levels. So unless you differentiate between endogenous and exogenous ketones, it's meaningless. Like the number on your blood ketone meter is effectively meaningless, because it doesn't tell you whether it came from 1,000 calories of butter you just downed, or your bum and belly that you actually want to lose. And if you're creating a situation of energy toxicity, the insulin is going to rise to hold your stored body fat in storage while you use up all that bulletproof coffee or cheese or whatever you just ate in infinite quantities, chasing high ketones, believing that you are going to become healthier somehow by eating all that extra energy that your body didn't really need because you had plenty stored.
Mm-hmm. Which leads us to the next myth, which is you have to be in ketosis to burn fat. And I want you to talk about the study that compared the low fat diet to the low carb diet.
Yeah, the Diet Fit's Chris Gardner from Stanford a few years ago. Interestingly, a lot of these studies came out of Gary Taubes and Nussi,
right.
and had these ideas. And Taubes has spent $50 million of venture capital money from the Arnold Foundation funding these studies, and then people like Stanford, and I think Kevin Hall's probably blown $100,000, $100 million, according to Tommy Wood, in trying to win an argument with Gary Tubbs, because they don't see eye to eye, and Kevin's just trying to go, can you please shut up? But no matter how much money we spend on these studies, Gary doesn't change his mind, and the books keep saying the same thing. But yeah, one of the studies was the Diet Fits, where they just said, let's get your try to eat the best quality food you can, go low carb or go low fat, prioritize whole foods, and then move it to a point where you think it's sustainable, that you can do this for the long term. And both arms, low carb and low fat, both seem to do just fine. There's a massive distribution in results, but the results are very, very similar whether you go to low carb or low fat. So and that really aligns with our satiety data analysis, that going low carb is definitely good, and going low fat also tends to lead to satiety and weight loss. It's that combination of fat and carbs in the middle, where you've got a similar combination of refined fat, refined carbs, low protein, low satiety, low nutrient density, that just drives us to continue to eat and eat and eat and eat those foods, and there's no off switch. So yeah, that seems to be the thing that we need to avoid. And that's the thing that we're programmed to eat more of those foods when they're available. It's like the only time that those foods are available in the real world is coming up to autumn, or, milk for babies or growing cows. That's a combination of fat and carbs. And it's like it's sending a signal to grow now. And we get this hyperphagic dopamine response from both the fat and carbs together. And we keep on eating and can't put down the donuts or the cookies or pretty much everything that's in the center aisles of our shopping centers that's some combination of sugar, refined starch, and refined vegetable oils that's so cheap and hyperpalatable. So yeah, that's a massive mind-blowing moment for me to understand that it's not fat versus carbs. It's that combination of fat and carbs together that if you move away from that danger zone, you'll be in a much better place. And even if you alternate between one extreme and the other, I think you're into carb cycling to some degree as appropriate. And yeah, that can be beneficial if your blood sugars are tuned in.
Yeah. And I mean, we need fat for the cholesterol, for the hormones. Like there is a place for these things. But like you said, it's when you're combining the refined versions of these things that is the disaster of when it comes to the obesity epidemic.
And but it's just good business. It's so profitable for the food companies to sell us this stuff. It's there's no conspiracy. It's just great business.
It's great business.
We love to buy it. You color it, you flavor it, make it look like it's got nutrients, and put a shiny red package on it, and we just love it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's so important for everybody to hear that message, because as you know, like the dieting industry is as heated, as debated as politics and religion now. And people are like, they get that tunnel vision, whether they're vegan or they're keto or they're carnivore. And it's like, this is the only way. When really the research shows it's just a matter of eating real food. Like for sure, we have to have variance in all of this for each individual person. But I always say, go back to what your great grandmother was eating. She wasn't downing MCT oil and going super low carb or anything like that. Like, and there was no obesity epidemic. They didn't even track that. There was no calorie counting. Obesity was something like less than 4% in North America back then. And they were eating just like they would sit down. And I always say, you put a little lard on your fresh sourdough bread, and you eat your roast and your eggs that you got from your chickens that morning or whatever it is, right? It was just real food. It's real. Yeah.
And the whole named diet fad culture has become a religion for so many people. They don't go to church, but they follow their politics or the nutrition, and they belong to this community that's what they all believe, and they all believe so fervently. And there's people with the diametrically opposite beliefs, and I just say your diet doesn't need a name or a belief system. You just need enough nutrients. So if you focus on giving your body nutrients without excess energy, it all just falls into place. And if you focus on giving your body what it needs rather than low or depriving or restriction or more is better, it just all comes together.
So can we burn fat by eating more fat then?
No, it doesn't really make sense, does it? When you step out of the little keto zone. If you go low carb, your body will start to burn more fat. But you need to dial back the fat in your diet to allow the fat on your body to be used. So, and 2 years later, that just sounds like a stupid comment. But, when I was immersed in keto culture, I thought I was crazy because everybody else in that culture was going, just eat more fat. You're not losing weight, add more butter. It's like, but it's amazing how strong the group think can be.
Yeah. Now, and fat is very calorie dense. So when it comes to the calories of things, like a lot of ketoers believe that calories don't really matter, that, you just eat fat to satiety and you're going to lose body fat because your insulin's going to be suppressed. So what's wrong with that thought process? Because I would say probably 98% of ketoers think that.
As I said before, eating more fat doesn't raise your insulin in the short term, but you've got to understand that as I said before, insulin is an anti-catabolic hormone, even more than it's an anabolic hormone, which is the building. So it stops your body from breaking down more than it forces energy into the cells. So once you sort of see it that way, you understand that what you need is a way of eating that promotes greater satiety. And energy balance is a thing. Like calories are a thing, but they're not a very useful way to help people just, eat less calories and they'll lose weight because, your body adapts and your metabolism changes, as you know really well. So a better way to manage that, I think, is to say, let's look at the macros initially. Are you getting enough protein? Are your blood sugars stable? Do you need to bring down your carbs? At that point, once you've got healthy blood sugars in a normal range, then you can dial back the fat in your diet to lose fat in your body. And then if you want to really level it up, let's focus on the other micronutrients that you need in your diet and what foods are going to give them to you. Don't just reach for the supplement bottle because they're isolated in a way that your body doesn't really understand. Let's look at the whole food that your body understands and gives it the nutrients it needs, so it doesn't need to keep on eating more and craving more food to get what your body is craving. You need to understand that your amygdala, your lizard brain, is trying to keep you alive and trying to make you survive the famine. And if your prefrontal cortex is trying to use a calorie counting app to stop you eating as much, it'll rebel. The Lizzie will find a way, and the calories on your MyFitnessPal won't matter if you're not providing your body with a macronutrient ratio and enough micronutrients from your food that provides satiety. So calories are always a thing and energy balance is a thing, but it's not the best way to, it's too simplistic to get results for most people most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so everybody will say, well, if we increase our protein and we drop our fat down, which, by the way, I never got satiated by putting fat in. Never. It was like protein 100% had to be in my meal.
It really feels satiating when you down 2,000 calories of butter. You say, well, true. It's really filling. I didn't eat much butter.
You don't want to eat more of it.
Yeah. But it's like, dude, you just, had 1,000 calories. That's why you feel satiated. It's just really compact. So you don't need much of it to get the energy.
Yes. And so people will say, though, okay, if we bring down the fat and we put up the protein, then we're going to get to the gluconeogenesis, which is like a hotly debated topic, Marty. So is that going to happen?
Oh, well, gluconeogenesis, why is that bad? I mean, if you eat enough protein, your body can convert protein to glucose if required. But if you've got enough carbs in your diet, your body doesn't bother changing protein to glucose because it's a really energy intensive process. So if you get carbs in your diet, it doesn't really happen that much. But yeah, gluconeogenesis is just not a big concern because getting enough protein and any excess protein can be converted to glucose that your body really needs. But the reason why your blood sugars are elevated is because you've got so much energy stored in your body and your body fat that the glucose is backing up in your system, so it's overflowing into your bloodstream. So the way to really attack your blood glucose that you're worried about blipping a little bit because you had the steak is to find a way of eating that decreases your body fat, so it's not stacked up and your glucose isn't backing up into your bloodstream where it really doesn't belong in really high levels. You just want healthy levels, but not excessive levels. So protein turning to glucose shouldn't really be a massive concern for most people. And if you do see your blood sugars rising after a high protein meal, it's probably an indication that you have insulin resistance to some degree. You don't have enough insulin working well for you, and to improve your insulin resistance, you need to get back within your personal fat threshold, which is a matter of decreasing your stored body fat. So people who have issues with their blood sugars rising after a high protein meal actually need more protein and less fat, not the other way. And, keto world has just been banging on about the other thing. And no matter how much we've tried to tell the keto gurus and, Facebook, people have gone insane trying to teach the gurus, but, it didn't work. We tried.
No,
a few of them are turning around though. So as they see the craze turning, a lot of people, some of them are changing their minds. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are just moving on and saying,
Yeah.
keto is an old craze. Like paleo, unfortunately, sort of died off when everybody started making keto comfort foods and processed nut butters, and because it was paleo. But anyway,
Yeah.
I liked paleo. I like
I,
Rob a lot. I love Rob.
Same. And it's what I go back to. It's what I've done. I've eaten paleo for 12 years now, and it's what by far works the best for me by far.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, and we're going to get into this, everyone, his data-driven fasting. But when I was going through the program, I realized I've done this all on my own without actually doing the blood sugar testing part of things. Like I've really in the last 10 years been able to really dial in how much of each macro do I need in order to be satiated and make sure that I don't have to eat for another 4 or 5 hours. And I know when I sit down to a meal that doesn't have those macros in it, and I don't mean specific numbers, I mean like eyeballing what I need to have on a plate. I know when I eat something and I'm going to be hungry an hour later. I can tell. I'll be like, oh, I can't. Oh, I need to get some protein in this, or else I'm going to be hungry in an hour and I'm going to overeat. And it's all just naturally, I've figured it out. And you've created a system that won't take years like it did for me to figure out. But I always do return to paleo. And I think one of the myths that you don't actually mention in your book is a lot of ketoers will say this was our natural energy source as a hunter-gatherer, that this is how we would have eaten. And I'm like, no, hunter-gatherers were not pouring MCT oil in their coffee, which, by the way, I do appreciate that because it does help with fasting. But in general, that's not how we ate. Ketosis was a form of it was a backup source of fuel for the body when there was times of starvation.
Yeah.
And yes, that then
and if you could find that big fat, if you could find the big fat woolly mammoth and kill it, it'd be great. That'd be really, really, really cool. But most of the time you're living on the lean kangaroos and whatever else was around.
Kangaroos. I know you said that in your book, the kangaroos. And I'm like, Marty, we don't all have kangaroos around. Like buffalo, very lean.
Yeah, all the game meats that aren't grain fed and fattened up are really lean. So if you could get the
river,
fat,
like trout, like stuff like fish from the river, it would have been really lean little, grouse that were running around that you could easily catch. Like we were not killing a ton of mammoths, people. It was a low fat, high protein diet.
They weren't all fat, but fat was prized and coveted because it was so rare and we were so lean and needed the energy. But now we're so fat and we got abundance of energy on our body and our food system. We need to reverse engineer that scenario. We need to reverse engineer paleo. We've gone to the other extreme, but we're still mentally optimized. Our systems are optimized to seek out energy in a world of energy abundance, and it just doesn't work for us. So we need to just reverse engineer the system. We can do that quantitatively, and once you learn do it quantitatively following the numbers, you can then do it intuitively. But sometimes you need to follow the numbers for a bit.
Yes, which is let's get to that. So let's talk about the fasting part of things. What have you been seeing with the fasting? Like where are people going wrong? Because I know you've done so many great little polls in your Facebook groups as to, and you show them in your book, which is in one of them was like, what do you find goes wrong with your fasting? And so I think the number one thing was I overeat afterwards.
And just I fasted for 10 days, but I'm not losing weight over the long term because as soon as I finish the fast, I'm craving the peanut butter and all the energy dense, nutrient poor foods that will enable you to regain the stored energy and bring your energy stores back. And at that point, your body doesn't really care about muscle and protein. So you're not prioritizing protein because that's really hard to overeat when you're really, really hungry. You're not going to sit down to 300 grams of protein after you've fasted for 10 days. You're looking for the super energy dense foods. So the number one thing that we've got more than 1,000 people saying, that's me, is just losing and regaining the same weight over and over
Right.
again. So people think they're getting this magical autophagy from extended fasting, but yeah, you're probably healthier at the end of your 10 days. But if for the next 2 days you just can't stop eating, you're hyperphagic, and your appetite can't switch off for really nutrient poor crap foods, then you're not going to be healthier 3 days after you finish that fast than you were 13 days before. So yeah, you need to find a way that will, in a sustainable way, lead towards a lower energy toxicity, lower energy storage, lower body fat. It all comes back to looking, feeling healthier. If you look in the mirror and you're not fat and puffy, then you're probably going to be healthier, as Ted Naiman says. So yeah, you need to, it's not just having that 3 days of magic autophagy that then you can eat whatever you want. It's finding a way of sustainably moving towards optimal.
Yeah. And they don't actually know how long you have to fast for in order to reach, I say autophagy. You say it a little different.
Everybody on Facebook does though, Karen. Everybody's got these great memes that says 3 hours, you get this, and 7 hours, you get this, and 12 hours, you get 36 hours. That's magic. And
maybe if we were mice, right?
and 48 hours, it's nirvana. And
Yes.
and then you get transcended to anyway. No, yeah, but like you mentioned, there's studies of autophagy in mice, but you know that says, what do they fast for 28 days or something ridiculous in a mouse, but a mouse day is 40 human days. So you know, times 28 by 40, are you going to fast that long to get these magical autophagy benefits? And it's such a nebulous term that you get autophagy if you turn over your cells, your energy, which happens when you exercise and you're not obese. So yeah, you just need to find a way of being fit, healthy, and as lean as you can sustain reasonably for the long term, and then you'll be metabolically healthy. So yeah, cancer and diabetes and heart disease and everything we're afraid of all the metabolic diseases these days all relate back to not being over fat and not having too much fat and not enough muscle.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the data-driven fasting and explain exactly what it is? Because it's a whole different approach that's never been done before that I've seen. As to,
cool.
It's so cool. And at first you think it's carb tolerance testing, which is, for people listening, if you don't know what that is, it's you eat a meal or you eat a certain amount of food. And this comes from Rob Wolf's book. You eat a certain amount of food with one kind of food. And then 2 hours later, you test your blood sugar to see if your blood sugar is still elevated to a certain point. And if it is, it means that food's not great for you and you need to avoid it for a while or indefinitely. And so you're seeing what foods you can tolerate as far as like, what's your blood sugar response to it. So Marty here's done something completely opposite, like same kind of idea, but different. So tell us about it.
Yeah. Most people in low carb keto world and diabetes world focus on, like to keep my blood sugars stable. So I'm going to avoid carbs and eat fat to keep my blood sugars really stable. But I saw more and more that people were like, I'd run into people at low carb conferences and they're wearing the CGM, these doctors, and they're saying, I'm keeping my insulin low as possible. Therefore, I'm trying to keep my blood sugars low and trying to tame my CGM and keep it flatline. So I'm just eating butter and bacon and an MCT oil, and you look at them and you're going, dude, you just look inflamed and puffy. It's not working for you. So I think what people we need to understand that having some blood sugar variation is normal and healthy. Like healthy people have stable blood sugars that rise a little bit after they eat, maybe up to 30 milligrams per deciliter, 1.6 millimoles, and then come back down. But you can't, that's because they're not in a state of energy toxicity, that they've got too much fat energy stored, so all the energy backflows into their bloodstream, and you can't mimic metabolic health by avoiding protein and carbs and just eating more fat to get stable blood sugars. So that's sort of the turning it on its head. But after watching my wife's CGM all the time, I realized that, when our blood sugars are high, it's not a great time to eat. You don't want to jam in more food at that point. But when the blood sugars get low, it's time to eat to bring the blood sugars back up. So you can sort of time your meals. Type 1 diabetes is a little bit different. And data-driven fasting is not perfectly applicable to that. But in us who have got working pancreases, you can just use a little simple blood sugar meter to test your blood sugars before you eat and use that as a fuel gauge. Because as I've mentioned, really you can think of your body fat as the big storage vessel, and then on top of that you got the fat in your blood, and on top of that you got the glucose in your liver and your bloodstream, and they really sit on top of each other due to oxidative priorities. So to get to the body fat, you need to attack the glucose in your blood that needs to be burnt off first. So the way to do that is just use your blood glucose to time your meals. And when your blood glucose is lower than normal for you, it's time to eat. So data-driven fasting just says, are you hungry? Or do you feel like you're hungry? Let's test your blood sugars. If it's above normal for you, then you probably don't need to eat. You got plenty of fuel on board. It's just, I'm dreaming of that yummy donut in the cupboard that is left over from last night or whatever. But if your blood sugars are actually low for you when you're hungry, then it's time to eat again. So data-driven fasting just looks at your normal pre-meal blood sugar for 3 days, and then we get you to practice for 5 days eating below that blood sugar trigger, and then after that your trigger drops progressively as you can keep up with it. So it's just sort of progressive overload for your metabolism that guides you to a lower blood sugar and therefore a lower body weight.
So is the goal to continue to basically go as long as you can? Like you're kind of working that muscle as to, okay, first week we're just dropping a little bit below, and then we're going to see if we can drop a little bit more. That trigger.
Yeah. I mean, we have 30-day challenges, and that seems to be long enough for people to make really good progress. And it's really astounding the progress people make in the challenges just in 30 days. But we encourage people to go into a sort of a maintenance period where they get a slightly higher blood sugar trigger for a few weeks just to recover, because any form of dieting can be stressful. You want to recover, you want to practice maintaining, getting to normal routine, and then you can go again and go down, do another challenge to drive the blood sugar lower again if you want to, if you feel up to it, and just keep on repeating that until you get to where you want to be, and then maintain from that, and then maybe get strong and build some muscle, which is good as well from there.
And I'm so happy you say that, Marty, because I just I was thinking about this the other day about where is weight loss going in this world, right? And I'd love your opinion on that too. But what I came to was weight loss has to happen in phases. It's the only sustainable way to really continue to lose weight, because our bodies will always adjust to what we're doing. Yep. Right. And so you have this 30 days where people can drop a lot of weight, and then you're saying, okay, come out of that. Let's go back up a little bit in the caloric intake. Let's maintain for a while, and then let's go back and do it again. Right. Until you get off all the weight that you're looking to get off. And what a safe way, and just a way that that's sustainable to continue to lose weight. And unfortunately, it's not sexy. People are going to be like, they jump on, they're like, oh my God, but I just lost 10 pounds. I just want to keep doing this because it's working. It's like the keto fasting. We just start to fall back into that old trend of, but it worked. It worked for the first 6 months to a year, however much weight you had to lose. And then suddenly it stops, and you have to go lower carb. You have to fast longer, fast more. And that's the trend that we're seeing with this keto groups, with every diet really, because people think more is better. Keep doing what you were doing because it worked to start with. And you're saying, no, let's train your system. Let's look at the data. Let's do it for a month. Let's come out of it. And then we go back in. And it's not to say you go back to a unhealthy diet, because you're also very, very into micronutrients. I think that that's so key.
It's really important. It's the best way to get your blood sugar to drop is to eat a high protein snack or meal, which most people find their blood sugar drops and they can eat again fairly soon. So rather than going ADF or OMAD, they're eating 2 or 3 meals a day that give them the protein and nutrients they need. And the good thing is at the end of 30 days, you haven't lost all this lean muscle mass that usually happens in fasting. And when your body loses muscle, it just sends out this, if you lose all your muscle, you're dead. So it wants to maintain enough muscle. So you just keep overeating the crap food that you've got in front of you until you get enough protein to regain the muscle. So that's when all the protein leverage hypothesis comes in. So it's sort of a super hack of, are your blood sugars elevated after meals? Then dial back the carbs. Have you got plenty of body fat? Dial back the dietary fat so you can lose fat. And it's really a timed protein sparing modified fast to some degree, which is, it's hard to go wrong. But you don't need to go to the extreme of protein sparing modified fast. It's just enough protein without excess energy from carbs and fats. So yeah, most people do best when they just find the sustainable level of protein to energy ratio that works for them.
And how can increasing the micronutrients help a person to lose weight?
It just helps with cravings. I mean, micronutrients, you talk a lot about mitochondrial function. I mean, that the micronutrients is what drives the energy production in your mitochondria to generate energy. So not only you are producing more energy, your body isn't craving those micronutrients. So Rabenheimer and Simpson talk about the protein leverage hypothesis, that we keep on eating till we get enough protein. But our data analysis of all the data from optimizers indicates that you get greater satiety when you get enough sodium and potassium, magnesium, and you crave salt, you crave sodium, and you eat enough until it tastes too salty, and you get enough. But you have a similar sort of pattern with all the other micronutrients to some extent. So if you start focusing on filling, okay, I filled my protein, I've got enough of that, and I've got heaps of stored glucose and body fat. So now I need to look at, am I getting the minerals that my body needs so it satisfies the cravings for that? And then look at the vitamins that my body needs, and let's look at real foods that are in the form my body understands that I can satisfy my cravings. So it's we always eat to our cravings. So if we don't manipulate our dietary choices to manage satiety, we're always going to keep eating no matter how much our conscious brain tries to restrict.
Yeah, I've always said we have to eat in a way that creates a natural caloric deficit. And so putting in enough protein, which Robenheimer and Simpson have proven in their amazing book. They're coming up in an interview in about a month, so everybody stay tuned for that. We're going to talk more about the protein leverage hypothesis that Marty and I are talking about here today, but also that your graphs show, your data that you show in the book shows that when you reach that satiety, that you'll reach satiety when you also reach enough of that mineral of those micronutrient intake, right? Enough of it. And I just think that that's so people don't realize. Even after I read the book, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to go get some spinach, and I'm going to put spinach, because I get lazy with the food I eat, right? I'll just be like, I'll just eat protein. Like I'll just eat eggs or, and I'm like, no, I got to start paying more attention to the micronutrient value of my meals. So I got this big thing of organic spinach and some, sauerkraut. And I'm like, I got to step it up here a little bit. Thanks to Marty.
No, I feel your pain, because your body just naturally gravitates to those yummy comfort foods. But you can reverse engineer what your body needs. And then we've designed diets around, recipes around that to provide your body with all of the nutrients it needs without excess energy. So that's I think that's pretty cool. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty exciting. I think that's where hopefully nutrition is heading, that everybody's
Yes.
going to jump on the nutritional optimization movement, and that people just realize that their body needs enough nutrition without excess energy, and we'll simplify the noise and move beyond diet religions. But it might
And
be a
go to
while,
more
but that's my dream.
personal nutrition. No, we are heading that. We are the trailblazers in that, Marty, where we're saying, because you're showing that this is what people are looking for, because like we were talking before we started to air, your program is really popular, and I want everybody that's listening to go check it out. It's, these 30-day challenges are very affordable. They're a great way to just dial in your personal fasting, your personal diet, so that you're not going to harm your body anymore. And I think that that's just so key. So I'm going to link to it in the show notes, but you've got a 30-day challenge.
Yep.
You've got a master class. You've got some recipe ebooks, and you also give away your data-driven fasting ebook.
Yeah. The whole manual of all the FAQs that people kept asking, and put it out there. So
it's a great book for download. And what about the Big Fat Keto Lies? Is that for sale, or is that?
They can buy Big Fat Keto Lies as well. So I'll give you a link for that.
And that's so good. I wish every keto person would just read it, would just get off their throne and go, okay, I'm going to just read what this guy has to say.
Lots of people are triggered by the title, but nobody's come back and said, I think you're wrong. They've gone, oh, okay.
It's great. It's a play on words, the big fat, like it's great. I thought, but I did. Yeah. Probably so many ketoers were like, oh, I'm not going to read that. Right. But they should, because it's not like you're saying, you're not going totally against it. You're just saying this has to be done correctly, and we haven't been doing it right. And so I think it's, I think people need to realize that. So
there's so many benefits of going low carb, but we haven't understood it's not about minimizing protein and avoiding carbs. It's generally when you go low carb, you get enough protein and you cut out the refined crappy carbs, and that's where the magic is. That's where the benefit happens for most of us. It's not about elevated ketones and more fat and avoiding protein. And let's just move on and grow up. Hopefully the keto movement, the low carb movement, will power on and not just die out as a crazy fad.
I know. Yes. But it seems like there's a lot of big keto gurus that are kind of starting to just shift gears a little bit and saying, like, even like Peter Attia is like, yeah, I can't do it. Like, it's not good.
Peter realized he's, was fasting for too long and losing muscle.
His reverse T3 was going through the roof every time he fasted. He still fasts, but he says like, oh, my reverse T3 goes through the roof when I do.
Yeah, massive credit to Diet Doctor, who have, turned the whole ship around and redirected what they're doing to be more
Ted
focused on
Nyman.
satiety. Yeah, Ted whispered in Andreas's ear and changed things a bit. So it's good.
All right. And you guys, Marty's got his own podcast as well. So be sure to check that out, Optimizing Nutrition. Anything else? I think that's it. Where can people find you? Optimizingnutrition.com. Correct. We did say that at the beginning. So I will link to it in the show notes. Your next challenge is coming up October. What?
Yeah, 9th of October.
9th of October.
9th of October, then another one on the 20th of November.
Okay. So every, what would you say, 2 months or so?
Yeah.
You run one? So for people that are listening to this down the road? 7
challenges a year. So a lot of people get the unlimited and just keep coming back, and the community support is great. So we've had 1,500 people in the challenges, and it's just a really great environment, and people love being a part of that momentum and sharing the successes and learnings and, troubleshooting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for the book and for everything that you've done to help educate people on this matter. I think it's so important. So I appreciate you, and I hope to have you back again.
Awesome. That'll be a pleasure. Great chat. Thanks, Karen.